الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Allahumma ameen. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be going through the evidence of Yusuf alayhi salam and how these people, the people who justify entering into the governments of the Taghut, they use the evidence of Yusuf alayhi salam in order to justify their actions. So, inshallah, we're going to be delving fairly deep into their reasoning and see if it holds water against the Quran and Sunnah. Basically, as I mentioned, these people say that the evidence of Yusuf alayhi salam is a proof. And what is their claim? So first we have to understand what their claim is. So many people nowadays who wish to justify their involvement within the governments of the world, they use the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. So how do they use it? They say that Yusuf alayhi salam participated in the hukm of the Taghut. So he wanted to accomplish certain goals, and thereby he participated in the hukm of the Taghut. So likewise, we want to accomplish said noble goals, or some noble goals, if they even are noble to begin with. So we will partake in the governments of the Taghut. So they use this, something that's called qiyas in Islam, and it's analogical reasoning. And so they apply the hukm of the precedent that was set by Yusuf alayhi salam to their situation, or what they perceive to be the hukm. Okay? So before delving deep into the topic of Yusuf alayhi salam and how they use him as evidence, we have to first ask the question, was that individual a Taghut? Was the king of Yusuf alayhi salam a Taghut? So if we were to look at the various tafsir, for instance, the tafsir of Imam al-Tabari, rahimahullah, or Imam Ibn Kathir, they both share the same opinion regarding this. They narrate from Mujahid, who was a tabi'i, by the way. The king of Yusuf accepted Islam. So they say that the king of Yusuf accepted Islam. Further, Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah, he goes on to say that the king of Yusuf, he was a pious man. At the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, he was a pious man, rajulun salih. So some of the mufassirin even went on to even say that they even named the king. They said his name was Ar-Rayyan ibn al-Walid, and he was from the Amaliqa, and he believed in Yusuf alayhi salam. So the people, some of the ulama that shared that sentiment that I just mentioned, were the likes of Imam Abu Hafs al-Hanbali al-Dimashqi in his tafsir, al-Nisaburi in his tafsir, al-Mawardiyu in his book al-Nukat wal-Uyun, and others obviously. So we understand that all these ulama, the ones that we mentioned by name and others, they held the view that he was a Muslim, and some, like I said, held the view that he was a pious man. So if we were to believe and just take their opinion as it is, there would be no need to have this discussion at all. I could just end the live right now, because khalas, the whole proof that they claim to have is nullified, because the hakim, or the king which they claim to be a taghut, is a Muslim. So khalas, so their evidence is futile at this point. But obviously, we know that there are some ulama that did not ascribe Islam to this king, and for their sake, and for the sake of refuting the claim that Yusuf alayhi salam in fact engaged in the governance of the Taghut, we're going to hypothetically ascribe kufr to this king in order to prove that even that their claim is bogus, essentially. And we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this king to stand in front of us, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, and seek his right from us, for us ascribing kufr to him. So it's important to know how their reasoning of qiyas weighs to the Quran and Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنكُمْ فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. O you who have believed, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those in authority over you. And if you disagree amongst yourselves over anything, then refer it back to Allah and the Messenger, if you truly believe in Allah and the last day. That is the better conduct and leads to the most excellent outcome. So these people who use the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam, they say that he participated in the government of the king as a means to achieve an end. And we want to partake, they say we want to partake in a similar means to achieve a similar end. So they extrapolate the hukam of Yusuf alayhi salam, or what they perceive to be the hukam, and apply it on themselves. So what we have to understand is, first of all, this is qiyas, as mentioned before, analogical reasoning. And analogical reasoning has principles that we must follow and stay within the confines of, or else it's just going to be chaos. So we're going to briefly, inshallah, very, very briefly describe what the principles of qiyas are. So there's a precedent, or what we call the asl in Arabic, and there's the new problem or situation, the fara'. And then there is a illa, which is basically just the circumstances or situations that lead up to the said hukam. So, for instance, in order to tie it in together with the situation at hand, the alleged asl is that Yusuf alayhi salam partook in a government of the taghut. The fara' is the people nowadays want to participate in the governments of the taghut. So the asl is Yusuf, and the fara' is people nowadays want to partake in what they perceive to be a similar situation of partaking in the governments of the taghut. So the illa is the circumstances that Yusuf alayhi salam wanted to accomplish noble deeds, and hey, we want to also accomplish noble deeds. So in their mind, the illa is the same in both situations. So in their mind, everything is aligning up perfectly, and therefore they can apply the hukam of Yusuf alayhi salam, what they perceive to be the hukam of Yusuf alayhi salam, to their situation. So as we should know, inshallah, that qiyas, there's obviously legitimate qiyas and illegitimate qiyas. So one needs to know the difference, and one needs to know how to extrapolate or do analogical reasoning correctly, because as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions that the root cause of much evil and misguidance it does not happen more so than with people misusing qiyas or applying illegitimate qiyas. Further, Imam al-Shatibi rahimahullah, he mentions that any hukam that is extrapolated from an illegitimate qiyas cannot be applied to the religion or put within the religion, as this will lead to people making halal haram and haram halal. And how true is that today? How true is that today? Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he further comments, and I'm relaying their statements in meaning as opposed to quotes, just for convenience, to be honest. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he basically says, he summarizes the principles of qiyas in a way that if all of the circumstances and conditions of the precedent and the fara', or the asl and the fara', are similar in all their cases, then it's okay. He does not see anything in his heart against extrapolating the hukam of the precedent to the fara', or the asl to the fara'. So, but he says, he continues to say that if there is a differing circumstance, even one, then it is incorrect for you to extrapolate the hukam from the precedent to the fara', or the new situation. Okay, and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah comments on the statement of Imam Ahmad, and he says, and this is the majority opinion of the Hanafiya, the Malikiya, and the Hanabil. So we understand this is the majority opinion of our ulama. So as we mentioned in summary, there's two types of qiyas: illegitimate qiyas, qiyasun fasid, and qiyasun sahih. So illegitimate and legitimate qiyas. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're discussing these differentiating factors between the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam and the situation of these people. So remember, only one circumstance has to be different for the qiyas to be illegitimate, according to the ulama. So let's look at the first differentiating factor. So Yusuf alayhi salam was summoned by the king. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ فلما جاءه الرسول قال ارجع إلى ربك فاسأله ما بال النسوة اللاتي قطعن أيديهن إن ربي بكيدهن عليم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the king said, bring him to me. And when the messenger came to him, Yusuf alayhi salam said, return to your master and ask him, what is the case of the women who cut their hands? Indeed, my Lord is knowing of their plan. And this ayah, by the way, comes after Yusuf alayhi salam interprets the dream of the king, whereas the people who were perceived as people of knowledge around the king, they couldn't interpret it. But Yusuf alayhi salam interpreted it. So this established to the king that he was a man of deep knowledge. Okay, so to reiterate, he did not respond to the king instantly, right away. He said, return to your. He told the messenger, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قال ارجع إلى ربك, return to your Lord, and ask him the situation of the woman who cut their hands. So essentially, he's trying to clear up his name first before he does anything. So the king responds to the wishes of Yusuf alayhi salam, and he asks the woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قال ما خطبكن إذ راوتن يوسف عن نفسه قلنا حاش لله ما علمنا عليه من سوء قالت امرأة العزيز الآن حصحص الحق أنا راودته عن نفسه وإنه لمن الصادقين. So the king said to the woman, what was your condition when you sought to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam? They said, perfect is Allah. We know about him no evil. The wife of Al-Aziz said, so this is the one who accused him of coming onto her. Now she's saying, now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is of the truthful. So after this declaration, so remember the first declaration is after he interpreted the dream, it was established that he was a man of deep knowledge. Secondly, after this declaration of the woman and the wife of Al-Aziz, it was established that Yusuf alayhi salam was a person of immense dignity, honor, and taqwa to the king, of which few people reach, to be honest. I mean, imagine nowadays, the men chase after the woman. Imagine a situation, without getting too explicit, obviously, that a beautiful woman with power, wealth, is chasing after you, and the man, he pushes it away. He rejects it out of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a monumental stance of taqwa, to be honest. So we just have to put things in perspective. So from this, like I said, it was established to the king that he was a man of knowledge and a man of immense dignity, respect, honor, all these noble qualities. So because of these characteristics and qualities that were established to the king about Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he then said, he again repeated, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. And the king said, bring him to me, I will appoint him exclusively for myself. And when he spoke to him, he said, indeed, you are today established in position and trusted. So what do we understand from this? The reason and qualifications, like I said, the reasons and qualifications, prerequisite, whatever you want to call it, that the king even admired Yusuf or summoned him, was that he was a man of deep knowledge and the admirable qualities that we just mentioned. This is the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam. What is are these a situation? Is this a situation of the people who participate in the democratic governments or the Taghuti governments? Is the requirements to enter, I should say actually, is the requirements to enter into these Taghuti governments that you be a person of deep knowledge and that you be a person of deep honor, respect, integrity, all that good stuff? Yeah. The answer is absolutely no. And if you look into the rules and laws of your whatever country you're from, the country stipulates that you must be a certain age usually, you must be sane, you must be a citizen of the country. They're not going to have like some Chinese guy, Chinese citizen rule over America, for instance. And this is the situation of the people who want to join democratic elections and democratic governments and whatnot. And this is the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam. The situation is completely different. So there's not even a comparison to begin with. So remember, all it needs to be is one single fariq, differentiating factor, for the qiyas to be completely illegitimate. So let's move on, inshallah. The second one is obviously he refused to go until his name was clear, thereby signaling obviously honor, dignity, respect. So this is the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam, and look at the situation of the other people. They have to swear by the constitution, they have to swear by whatever document that they govern themselves by. They have to enter how many doors of ridda, depending on what country, the number of doors of ridda are more. than others, but you know the situation of your country better than myself. So clearly this is a very, very clear fariq, a differentiating factor between Yusuf alayhi salam and the people nowadays. So the third differentiating factor, Yusuf alayhi salam went straight from the prison to the king's palace. The people nowadays, like I kind of elaborating more so on what I said in the last point, is they have to go through so many doors of apostasy. You can't just run for office here. You have to respect and swear that you're going to govern by the governing document or constitution, that it's the law of the land. You have to swear by it. You have to view all religions as equal. You can't have a preference for people of the Islamic faith. You know, your constituents all have to have a right upon you, and many other doors of clear apostasy. You can't even favor the religion of Islam over other religions, because then you'd be sectarian, and you'd be automatically disqualified. And what's even one of the biggest calamities we see nowadays, and people are so proud of it, yani, Allah musta'an, is that people swear on the Quran to rule and respect by the Constitution. They swear on the Quran that they are going to rule and respect the Constitution, and that it's going to be the governing law which they operate in their office. Subhanallah. So this is the status of Yusuf alayhi salam, and this is the status of these people. Clear difference, night and day. So when Yusuf alayhi salam eventually arrives to the palace of the king, what did the king say to him? So we have to really make tadabbur of the Quran, because the answers are all in the Quran. So what did the king say to Yusuf alayhi salam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. So what did the scholars say regarding what the word makeen means? So the likes of Imam Atyre, rahimahullah, Al-Qurtubi, Al-Shawkani, Al-Razi, including others, said regarding this word, and their definition revolved around a very similar meaning, which was that he was being إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. Being makeen means that you are nafidul qawl, i.e. that your say is the end-all be-all. You can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, whatever you say goes, essentially. So this is the circumstance of Yusuf alayhi salam. How is this remotely similar to the situation of people nowadays? It's not even close. In fact, governments are designed to prevent people, an individual, from being nafidul qawl. They're designed to be different than that. For instance, look at America. They have 3 government branches, or branches of government: the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches of government. And the way they're set up that way is to have sort of checks and balances to prevent an abuse of power from either branch of government. So, like I said, it's designed to prevent any situation arising that would be similar to the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam. So again, very, very clear differentiating factor. It's not even close. Even if you look at the highest position that you can ever get in the United States government is the President of the United States. Even he himself, he can't just do whatever he wants. I mean, look at what they did to Trump. They tried to impeach him off a phone call. He did a phone call, and they didn't like it, and they were trying to remove him from office. There's no similarity between Yusuf alayhi salam when the king said, you are nafidul qawl, innaka al-yawma ladayna makinun amin, being nafidul qawli. There's no similarity at all. There's no similarity at all. And we mentioned all it takes is one differing factor for the qiyas to be illegitimate. And subhanAllah, we've mentioned before, and even then, this argument of qiyas and the qiyas being illegitimate is not even the strongest argument, to be honest. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue and mention the ayat of the Quran which are contradicted very, very clearly when they claim that Yusuf alayhi salam partook in the government of the Taghut. First, we want to look at while Yusuf alayhi salam was in prison, what was he doing? So Yusuf alayhi salam, while he was in prison, he was teaching prisoners about aqeedah and oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا صاحبي السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. O my two companions of prison, are separate lords better or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one, the prevailing? The worship not besides Him except mere names. You worship not besides Him except mere names, you have named them, you and your forefathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. Legislation is not but for Allah. Legislation is not but for Allah. In al-hukmu illa lillah. He has commanded that you worship not except Him. That is the correct religion, but most of the people do not know. So let's think about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. These are the words of Yusuf alayhi salam in the depths of prison. While he is in a state of relative weakness, he's imprisoned. He affirmed the hakimiyya is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In al-hukmu illa lillah. This was a statement of Yusuf alayhi salam. At one of the times that it's mentioned, it's a statement of Yusuf alayhi salam. Ironically, that's the same evidence they used Yusuf alayhi salam to justify committing shirk by joining these governments. Yusuf alayhi salam himself says, in al-hukmu illa lillah. So let's think about this. If they're saying, if Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was in the depths of prison, is saying, in al-hukmu illa lillah, by their claim, if we were to believe their claim, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees Yusuf alayhi salam, he goes, by virtue of his actions, he says, no, in al-hukmu illa lil-taghut. It's okay to hakum ila-taghut, or participate in the hukm of the taghut. So essentially, by their claim of saying that Yusuf alayhi salam partook in the government of the taghut, they're essentially saying that Yusuf alayhi salam is somebody who says something and contradicts it with their action. And this saying something and contradicting it with your action is not even, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow it for the layman like us. We're laymen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow it for us. So imagine the anbiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Great is hatred in the sight of Allah that you say what you do not do. So again, this is for the layman. So imagine the anbiya. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the punishment for the people who are greater in piety and status, the punishment is greater. It kind of goes, the higher the status, when you sin, the greater the punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا نساء النبي من يأت منكن بفاحشة مبينة يضاعف لها العذاب ضعفين وكان ذلك على الله يسيرا. O wives of the Prophet, whoever of you should commit a clear immorality, for her the punishment would be doubled twofold, and ever is that for Allah easy. So again, it's established that the higher the status of the person, the greater the punishment if they sin. So imagine you're saying Yusuf alayhi salam falls into this category, and their claim is the implication of their claim is that you're insulting the Yusuf alayhi salam. You're insulting and doubting the prophethood of Yusuf alayhi salam. SubhanAllah al-Azim. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to every nation a messenger to preach, worshipping Allah alone, and the avoidance of the taghut. So a similar principle can be mentioned. You're saying that every single messenger, alayhimu salatu wasalam, was sent with two overlaying principles: to worship Allah alone and to avoid the taghut. So you're saying that Yusuf alayhi salam preached this, yet he didn't act it because he partook in the government of the taghut. It's a complete contradiction. You can't say it. There's no uniformity in the statement if we compare it to the Quran. So either you're saying Yusuf alayhi salam is not a prophet, and at that point you could do whatever the heck you want, since we don't really care about you, to be honest. So, or we affirm that Yusuf alayhi salam was a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he actualized preaching oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the avoidance of the taghut. So again, this is another clear contradiction of what these people say. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض يتبوأ منها حيث يشاء نصيب برحمتنا من نشاء ولا نضيع أجر المحسنين. And thus we establish Yusuf alayhi salam in the land to settle therein wherever he willed. We touch with our mercy whom we will, and we do not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good. So what we understand from what these scholars have said about having tamkeen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirmed tamkeen for Yusuf alayhi salam in this ayah. So what did the scholars say about having tamkeen? What does it mean? Yani tamkeen is having essentially the ability to do what you want and establish whatever you want in the land. Further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes what having tamkeen means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran about those who have tamkeen in the land. الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر وَلِلَّهِ عَاقِبَةُ الْأُمُورِ. And they are those who, if we give them authority in the land, establish prayer and give zakah and enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and to Allah belongs the outcome of all matters. So by necessity, since it's established from the Quran, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that tamkeen was established for Yusuf alayhi salam. So by necessity, Yusuf alayhi salam is to act within the confines of this ayah. Yusuf alayhi salam, he is going to have aqama as-salah wa ata az-zakah wa amara bil ma'ruf wa naha 'anil munkar. So he would have enjoined good and forbid evil. So what is the biggest good and what is the biggest evil? So the biggest good obviously is tawheed, enjoining tawheed, and forbidding what? Shirk. So if we understand that having a ruler who rules by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down is a means for a really, really big munkar. Because, if the ruler is a mushrik, a lot of things are going to be legalized in the land. A lot of munkar is going to be legalized in the land. So what we're seeing here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishes tamkeen for Yusuf alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then describes what the person does when he has tamkeen in the land. So imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you have to ta'mur bil ma'ruf wa tanha 'anil munkar, that you're supposed to forbid evil, and then now you're going to come and say, no, Yusuf alayhi salam, he was part of the evil. He didn't even forbid it, he was part of it. This is what you're saying when you're claiming that Yusuf alayhi salam partook in the government of the Taghut. So you see how the implied claim of these people is that they insult the prophethood of Yusuf alayhi salam. Wallahu musta'an. Further, again, and this is probably one of the most eye-opening statements. This is what Yusuf alayhi salam said. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَائِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. He followed the millah of my forefathers Ibrahim, the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He followed the millah of Ibrahim. Yusuf alayhi salam making an open claim that he followed the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So from this, again, we established that in the Quran, we're not bringing like Brother Abu Ruqya says, we're not bringing the Bible here. This is the Quran. We're not speaking, like he says also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, we're not speaking French. This is the Quran. Okay, it's established that Yusuf alayhi salam said, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَائِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. He followed the millah of Ibrahim. So now we have to look, what is the millah of Ibrahim? How does one follow the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ إِذْ قَالُوا لِقَوْمِهِمْ إِنَّا بُرَآءُ مِنْكُمْ وَمِمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ كَفَرْنَا بِكُمْ وَبَدَا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةُ وَالْبَغْضَاءُ أَبَدًا حَتَّى تُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ. So there has already been for you an excellent pattern or a way in Ibrahim and those with him, when they said to their people, indeed we are disassociated from you and from whatever you worship other than Allah. We have denied you, we have rejected you, and there has appeared between us and you animosity and hatred forever until you believe in Allah alone. This is the millah of Ibrahim. How are you going to say Yusuf alayhi salam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved the statement of Yusuf alayhi salam in the Quran until the day of judgment. And this is what following the Millah of Ibrahim. Hatred, animosity, rejection, bara'a, we are completely disassociated from you. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the Millah of Ibrahim. And Yusuf alayhi salam says, I follow the Millah of Ibrahim. So who the hell are you to come and say that, no, he didn't disassociate, he didn't do adawa or baghda, he didn't do any of that. No, he actually participated in the government of the Taghut. And it's just complete contradiction, and you're completely insulting the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, or you're just belying the Quran, which essentially you are. The implication of what you're saying is belying the Quran. Wallahu musta'an. If we were to follow and continue on to their implication of what they're saying, because they're essentially saying, no, Yusuf alayhi salam did not follow the Millah of Ibrahim, because they're claiming that he partook in the government of the Taghut. So what is the status of somebody who does not follow the Millah of Ibrahim? And this, by the way, can be taken for general advice for just the da'wah in general. What is the status of somebody who does not follow the Millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِيَ نَفْسَهُ. And who would be averse to the religion of Abraham or the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, except one who makes a fool of himself? So by implication, you're calling Yusuf alayhi salam a fool for not following the Millah of Ibrahim. If what you're saying, if you believe what you're saying is true.